Okay, this is going to be a walkthrough of the Junior Varsity edition of Fantasy Excel. We are going to do the questions first and then the bonuses after. So let's get right into it. First up, what is the length of the player names? And this includes spaces. So there's a formula for this called len, so we can just say equals len, and that will tell us how many characters are in a text string. So if we do that, that will give us our answers. Level 2, how many characters are in all of these player, school and fantasy team names combined. So the len formula will actually work on multiple selections like so, and it will spill in an array. So we can just sum that array up and we'll have our answer. So much like the first question, we can say sum of len of all three of those at the same time. So let's drag that down and that should be correct for all of those. Okay, next up we're getting into scoring. So for each of the codes we need to take the total game score. So the total game score is the third value here, so we're given week, levels completed, game score, and bonuses correct. So we want to take the third set of numbers out of this string. So let's use text split to split it up. So if we say text split this, and the delimiter we want is a dash, that's going to give us all of our numbers out here. We need to times it by 1, however, to get them to go from text to numbers, and we're looking for this third number along there. So let's just drag that down for now, so we get it for everyone. And then we want to take the third number and multiply it by 5, which is how many fantasy points it's worth. So let's say equals this number times 5, and there we go. Okay, next up we want the sum of the total game score across all weeks for a given player. So the player's scores are in this tab here, so we need to split this down. So we've just seen how to do that, so let's do it again but for everybody. Let's say equals text split this on a dash and times it by 1. And then I'm going to press Control Shift down, right arrow, Control Shift up to get to the top, and then Control D to pull that formula all the way down. And what the question asked us to do is add up all of these points for a given player across all weeks. And of course this includes all weeks, so it's just adding all these numbers up for the player. So we can use a sum ifs for that. So let's say sum ifs. First argument is what we want to sum. We want to sum this up. Next argument is our criteria, that's this. Our next argument is what that criteria equals, which is this. So there we go. Okay, question 5, we're doing some counting. So we want to count how many players are in the given school or fantasy team. So we have all of the players here. This is a unique list of players, the school they're in and the fantasy team. So we want to count kind of the teams and the schools here. So let's say if this equals fantasy team, instead of typing it, I'm just going to do a quick shortcut and click it, highlight it here and press F9 to hard code it, just so I don't have to type out fantasy team. That's a nice little shortcut. So if that, then I want to say count if the fantasy team, which is here, and I'm pressing F4 to lock it, and then comma, what is the criteria? It's this thing here. So that will work for all the fantasy teams if I just enter that. But it will give me a false for all the schools, so I need to fill in my false condition. So comma, so otherwise we're in the school condition, we can say count if this time highlight the school, lock that with F4, comma, this again. And there we go, that should solve all those questions. Okay, level 6, what is the total score for a given player across all weeks? So here, we want to take into account kind of all of these point scoring numbers here and apply it to these numbers. So let's make them the same shape first of all. So I'm going to say equals 2 row of this. So I'm just spelling it out here so you can see what it looks like. So here's kind of the points that we need to multiply by these. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. We could just say equals this and lock it with F4 times by this, and that will multiply those numbers in turn. Let's just move this out of the way so you can see it. So that's multiplying 250 by 3, 5 by 563, and 500 by 5. So that will be the total points, and then we can sum it up. So that's the first way. Alternatively, you could use the sum product formula. So you could say equals sum product, this, and I'm going to lock it, and this, and that does exactly the same thing. So it does kind of the product of the two arrays, and then it sums them together. So now we have the total points for everybody in this column. So we can use another sum if now and say equals sum ifs, and we want the points. This is what we want to sum, where the player is this. Okay, level 7. How many points did the given fantasy team score in the given week number? So here we have another sum ifs, but we have extra conditions. First the week number and second the fantasy team. So we need to get the fantasy team into kind of this table. So let's put the fantasy team here. We can do that with an XLOOKUP. So we can say XLOOKUP the player in this column and give us back the fantasy team column. So there's all of the team names. And now we can do sum ifs again, but with multiple conditions. So we can say sum ifs this number, which is the total points, where the fantasy team is this, and the week number, which is here, is this. And there we go, that's level 7 done. So onto the bonuses now. How many schools are represented in the league? So if I just come to the schools over here, we could say equals unique of the schools, and there's all of our schools. We can just highlight those and see that it's 34 there. So let's put that in, 34. How many bonus questions were answered across all participants and weeks? Well, now that we've extracted that, we can just say sum of all of this stuff. This is all of the bonus answers. Okay, who is the player with the greatest number of characters when combining their name, school, and fantasy league? So we can do sum of len of this, just like we did on level 2. Drag that down, and we want to find the biggest one. So the quickest way to do that is probably to just filter it. So Control-Shift-L to add a filter to the top, sort largest to smallest, and here we go, it's the first name in the list. Okay, how many schools have only one player in the league? So let's grab our school names again with unique, and then I want to count how many times these appear. So I can say equals count if this range, lock it, says this school, and then I have how many players are in each school, and I want to find which ones have an answer of 1. So I can say does that equal 1? That will give me trues and falses. If I put a minus minus in front of it and put brackets around the whole thing, it will convert trues and falses to 1s and 0s. So all of the 1s here where there's one player, so I can just sum all of those up, which is 24. Okay, finally, who is the player with the same number of characters in their name and their school? So if we come over here, we want to say length of the player. Does that equal length of the school? And that's going to give us trues and falses again. So let's do our minus minus and then wrap the whole thing in another set of brackets. Then we'll have 0s and 1s. I can then use this kind of comma formatting, so it should be quite easy to see our answer, which is this here, Nikita. And there we go, there's a quick solution to Fantasy Excel.